Yo, what's going on? So here we are. We're here for our final part of the install. We have this one final wall and this bench that we have to do the install on. Whenever we do our installs, we like to do one wall. We normally don't wrap all the way around. I would normally do this wall, and then I would complete this one so I can get really crisp, clean corners. So that's how I go about doing this process. I've already sanded this. This is technically ready for finish. I'm gonna finish taping off all my areas. I'm gonna put a little bit of plastic on this bench just because I want that to be protected. So when I finish the wall, then the bench doesn't have product that's already been dropped all over it. That's kind of my process. Maybe you don't do it that way. That's just how we do it. And it's my preferred method because then I can kind of control different areas and do it in pieces and sections. And I'm not feeling rushed to go from corner to corner all the way around. So as you watch along the rest of this process, I'm gonna go through doing the largest wall inside the shower. We're gonna talk about how much material I'm gonna need per square foot. I'm gonna break all that down for you so that we can keep our waste down for doing the final finish. Okay, so here we go. You can see I've got my hand masker, I've got my non-bleed through tape, I got a couple scrapers. I'm just gonna go around, make sure this is all cleaned out. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take my hand masker and I'm gonna set this back from the area where I need to work so that I can put my other tape on. I do a process what's called double taping. Okay, so here we go. I got my two colors of tape, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay down my blue first, and I'm gonna leave it back, maybe about the thickness of a credit card, I heard somebody say once before. I would say it's pretty thin, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. If that's the thickness of a credit card, then that's perfect. I'm gonna run that down this part right here too. All right, this is my end tape. So here you can see what I've got going on right there. See how I've got this nice clean line all the way up. My second round of tape like this. I'm going to start on the wall, and I'm going to cut this piece in just a little bit over that blue so that it's closer into the wall, because whenever I do what I'm doing, I do it in 2 coats, right? Wet on wet, that's my technique. So here we go. I've got my nice clean tape line. You can see how I'm filling it in. You'll be able to see it really tight once we get right here. I'll do a little zoom in for you. There we go. See how when I line up on that other piece right there, that it's actually lined up and it's following it? So that I've got a nice clean straight line, even though the wall might wave a little bit. I'll do that around everywhere that I have to do this install, and we're ready to roll. All right, so next what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure this wall to figure out what the square footage is so we know how much product to mix. So there's an app, if you have an iPhone Pro, that's called the measuring app. You can use that and it works actually flawlessly to get the square footage of a wall. If you don't have a tape measure, I highly recommend you use it. I use it all the time. It's a great tool. Okay, so the next step that you have to do in this process is you need to apply the P541 primer at a 4:1 ratio about 15 minutes before you do your install and before you mix your powder. So this is F4 as a base coat underneath, which has been left to fully dry. I've sanded it. Now I'm gonna put P541 on at a 4:1 ratio, thanks to my buddy Max out of Ireland, who's a part of the team who gave me that information, and we talk back and forth. And then I'm gonna mix up my F2 in the ratio that I've shown you in my calculator that I've created. And then after that, in about 20-30 minutes, once that first coat's on, then I'm gonna push in my next coat, whether I want it smooth or I wanna create a texture. That's how I go about creating all these finishes. I always do at least 2 coats wet on wet. So what we're gonna do is now we're gonna figure out what our square footage is. So we're gonna take 81 square feet and we're gonna divide it by 3 because that's how much we're saying the smallest amount will cover. So once we get that, we're gonna come up with the number of 27. Then we're gonna take the number of 27 and we're gonna times that by 0.313, which is our powder amount for that 3 square foot coverage. Once we have that, then we can times our water and we should have the perfect amount for the coverage of this 81 square foot wall. Okay, so now we need to figure out how much water we need to add. What we're gonna do is take that same amount, 27, and we're gonna times it by the water, which on my chart says 72 grams. So we're gonna take 72 grams and times that by 27, and it's going to give us the exact amount of water that we need for that amount of powder. And then I would add just a bit more water. I would say maybe 5%. That's gonna make it a bit creamier. And for a big wall like this, I'm gonna want it that way. And then we'll have exactly enough for this wall. So here we go, I'm gonna put my bucket on there. I'm gonna zero out my scale. Make sure everything's good, So then in here we go, you can see I've got a little cheat sheet on here that I put on all of my things. I know it says F4 right there, but F4 and F2 basically take the same amount of water, so I just stick with that amount. You can see how much water I need for a maximum of the 20 kg. And you can see what it takes for a 5 kg. But what I'm gonna do on this is I'm gonna do 8.5 kgs. Do just a little bit more than my calculator stated. So what I'm gonna do now is weigh out the water for 8.5 kgs. I'm actually gonna give this a little stir beforehand. Make sure all the colorant's mixed up in there, because it can sit to the bottom, because it's heavier than the water. So we wanna make sure it's well mixed up. Everything looks good. We're gonna double check, everything's zeroed out, and there we go. We're gonna do 2,000 grams of water. Okay, so here we go. Now we're gonna be mixing up the F2. Watch how this liquefies. Start time in 10 minutes. Okay, so you see how much it's liquefied now, right? So I said I was gonna add just a little bit more water. This is still tinted water. I'm not putting a lot in there, just a little, because I want it just a bit liquidier. We mix this for 4 minutes, maybe 3. that consistency now. Just perfect. We're gonna leave it to sit for 10 minutes. While we wait, we're gonna get all our tools in order. And then we're gonna get ready to put on our first coat before our second coat. You see this? It's been about 10 minutes since we've started. See how much it's thickened up in there? So if you didn't give it this 10 minutes of resting before you go to use it, it would be too thick in the bucket and it's not had the chance to work through the process because we don't have a liquid additive, it's just water. This is strictly a powder only product. We don't sell you an activator or a binder that goes with it. It's strictly water.